This series introduces Youth Participatory Action Research, or YPAR, an approach that empowers young people to lead research projects addressing issues that impact their lives. YPAR fosters collaboration between youth and adults, enabling youth to develop key skills, advocate for change, and build agency. YPAR also enables adults in schools, communities, and other youth-serving systems to benefit from the insider expertise of youth in creating creative solutions to challenging issues. More information about the steps involved in a YPAR process is covered in our first module, What is YPAR? This module is geared to adults who are preparing to engage in YPAR. We ask a series of questions that invite you to reflect and prepare thoughtfully. Each question is accompanied by considerations for you based on your responses. These and other questions are also included in the YPAR design guide. Before you begin YPAR, it is helpful to be clear on goals. Considering possible goals does not mean you have predetermined the topic or outcome of young people's action, as those should be co-created with the youth team. Here are some questions to get you thinking about yours and other people's goals for YPAR. What does success look like? What will success look and feel like for the youth researchers? What experiences, skills, or other outcomes do youth want to gain? To learn more about the different outcomes and experiences youth get from participating in YPAR, consider checking out our Why Engage in YPAR module in this series. Why focus on adults? This section invites you to reflect on the role of the adults who will be facilitating YPAR sessions, whether that is you or someone else. YPAR requires that youth and adults partner together. This means that adults will make room for youth to lead the way. Adults engaging in YPAR must reflect on their own attitudes, assumptions, and behavior about the capabilities and leadership of young people throughout the process. Negative attitudes toward youth are common among adults and can harm collaboration. The role of the adults engaging in YPAR can change based on the knowledge, skills, and confidence of the young people. In the beginning, adults may have a more active role, for example, in crafting meeting agendas and designing learning experiences until youth have the knowledge and skills to do this in partnership with you. Over time, adults' roles in the group will shift as young people and the project develop. Adults are not disengaged figures sitting in the corner, but rather essential partners and facilitators in the success of the group. Adults may guide activities, offer ideas or suggestions, create feelings of safety and trust, and maintain the flow of activities. The first part of this video focuses on the role of adults because the adults' attitudes, background, knowledge, skills, and experiences impact the group. We will invite you to reflect on questions and offer considerations associated with different possible responses. Sometimes, a YPAR group is led by a single adult. However, it can be very helpful to have more than one adult supporting the YPAR group. Consider whether you can get support from another adult, and then, together, you can reflect on these questions. Who are the adults who will be facilitating YPAR? Adult allies play essential roles in facilitating a youth-centered project and scaffolding the research process. While adults were all once adolescents, our experiences of our own adolescence differ quite a bit from those of young people today. Further, having been a young person does not mean you have the necessary knowledge and skills related to facilitating youth engagement in research and action. Let's consider some questions around what you know and areas where you might explore further. What experience do you have sharing power with young people? A core process in YPAR is power sharing. Power sharing with young people means that youth have regular and increasing opportunities to apply their knowledge and skills to decision-making and problem-solving. It supports adolescents' development by fostering autonomy, setting and collectively working towards goals, and receiving respect from peers and adults. For more on how YPAR supports the developmental needs of young people, See our module on why engage in YPAR in this series. What are the identities that you bring into this work? Who you and other adults in the space are matters for the work you can do with young people. As people, we have diverse identities, including our race, ethnicity, educational or economic background, age, abilities and disabilities, gender, and sexuality. Self-reflection, or cultivating an awareness and understanding of how your multiple identities impact power dynamics and relationships, supports power sharing and trust building in the group. When your identities are similar to the youth and community, research has shown this can foster trust and improve communication. However, it is unlikely that you will match all the identity characteristics of the group, and your experiences of your identities are likely to differ from young people's experiences. It is important that you listen carefully to how young people's experiences may differ from your own. If you hold different identities than the youth and community, you may want to consider how this may influence the trust-building process in the group. What are perceived ideas from the youth you are working with of what makes an adult trustworthy? How does trust differ in historical and local contexts of where you are working? Sometimes, young people are slower to trust adults, and more specifically, may take more time to build trust with adults who are different from them. Being a consistent presence that listens and affirms their experiences can contribute to trust building. YPAR projects are strengthened when adults are able to reflect upon and leverage their identities towards collective work of the group. What is your role? A YPAR facilitator's role can influence professional obligations, positions of authority over young people's lives, the topics that youth end up studying, and the actions the group decides to advocate for. When you consider your role, it can be helpful to take stock of the professional obligations you have within that role regarding mandatory reporting, assessment, communication with youth outside of YPAR project time, and providing transportation. If you are a professional within a school setting, how might this role influence the youth in the project? What are your relationships with decision makers at your school? It can be beneficial when YPAR facilitators have collegial relationships with decision makers within their setting. Taking stock of these existing relationships before beginning can help you anticipate opportunities or roadblocks. Are youth receiving a grade for participating in YPAR? How might grading impact youth's participation in the group? Talking about how grades are assigned to tasks within a YPAR group is an important practice in transparency. If you are another professional, how will you bring your professional experience into the group? What additional training do you need to supplement your existing knowledge base? For instance, if you are a social worker, you might emphasize group processing, but have less experience with data analysis. What types of permissions or releases might you need to regularly interact with the identified group of young people? What relationships do you have with the community? What knowledge, skills, or experiences do you have related to research and community change? YPAR invites youth to learn about many forms of data collection, and then select at least one form: qualitative, quantitative, arts-based, or administrative, to better understand theirs or other people's experience with the topic. It can be helpful to familiarize yourself with the different steps that might be involved in different data collection processes. You can consider checking out the Investigating a Problem materials on the YPAR Hub or UC Davis Stepping Stones Steps 4 through 7 for activities and information about research and data collection. Every community has a formal and informal structure for how things get done. Reflect on what you already know, what you might need to learn about, who the key people are, and what the structures are to make change. If you haven't attended your town's council or a school board meeting, increasing your own familiarity with these decision makers and processes can increase your confidence in supporting youth to interact with decision makers for their action project. What is your experience supporting youth mental health and well-being? In YPAR, youth often select and discuss issues or concerns that are most important to them. This might include choosing topics like bullying, experiences with policing, or discrimination. Often, talking about the lived experiences in a supportive group can enhance young people's well-being by reducing feelings of isolation. Taking action to address unmet needs can be healing. However, these same discussions may be emotionally taxing on young people. It is important for adult facilitators to create a space of physical and psychological safety. Here are some questions for you to consider in preparing to support the emotional well-being of the youth on your team. How will adults be prepared to respond to any mental health challenges should they arise? What role do you and other adults have in mandated reporting? If you have a role as a mandated reporter, you will want to find a way to communicate those responsibilities to the youth in the group. It can be helpful to provide examples of what is reportable and what can be kept confidential. If you are unsure of the differences, contact leadership within your setting. What services are immediately available should you need to connect a young person in crisis? You may find that you would like more training on these topics prior to recruiting and engaging a group of young people. We recommend that adults consider taking widely available trainings such as Youth Mental Health First Aid or Question, Persuade, Refer. Considerations for recruiting and engaging youth. Thinking about the youth on the team. Now we are going to invite you to reflect on the youth who will engage in YPAR. This section might help you think through how to tailor your recruitment and approach to the unique attitudes, knowledge, needs, and skills of the youth. YPAR brings youth who might have had no opportunities for their voices or experiences to be heard and valued to the center of decision-making and community change. In some cases, you might plan to recruit youth with a specific experience, such as youth who have experienced bullying. There are other times when you might engage an existing group of young people, such as a youth council. However, each choice impacts the project in important ways. In this section, we will consider factors such as organizational affiliation, developmental stage, demographics, life experience, expertise, ability level, learning needs, and any other identities that youth may bring to the table. Recruiting youth from an existing group. Do you plan to leverage an existing relationship with an organization or group of youth, or do you plan to recruit an entirely new group? When you recruit youth from an existing group, you often have to navigate how well the group's goals align with the organization or classroom's goals. The benefit to working with an existing group is that they likely have some familiarity with one another, and the organization may benefit from their increased leadership knowledge and skills. You might want to know, how long has this group been meeting? When learning more about the group, it can be helpful to know how long they've been established and the typical length of time a young person is involved in the program. This can help identify whether this will be the right group to partner with for your YPAR efforts. Is the group made up of young people with shared identities or different identities? When you engage youth with at least one shared identity, for example, all youth who are African American, they might be able to give deeper reflections on shared experiences. More importantly, while youth in the group may share racial identities, they may differ in many other aspects of who they are. Honoring, celebrating, and exploring multiple identities that make up a person and their connection to their experiences can add richness and depth in YPAR. However, you may want to recruit a diverse group to understand dimensions of a particular topic that impact people differently, such as experiences of discipline. Since identities are complex and made up of multiple dimensions such as a person's race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, economic background, and ability, it is important to consider how you will navigate shared and diverging experiences, values, and perspectives. Is the group dedicated to tackling a certain topic or working within a particular issue area? When a group you are recruiting has experience with a particular topic, such as immigration, this can be leveraged within a YPAR group. However, the group might already be committed to certain actions or projects, so it can be helpful to think through how involvement in YPAR will strengthen their existing efforts and not derail their goals. What else has the group accomplished? Reflecting on the group's past work might give you some clues into the knowledge and skills the youth already have that you can build from. How often does the group meet? Does the group meet daily, weekly, or monthly? Will that frequency and duration work for the amount of time you might need for YPAR? Did youth choose to participate? Do they receive grades or credit? Do they receive money or other compensation? In order to retain young people long-term and uphold values of reciprocity, it can be important to think about how you will compensate them for their time. Often, this looks like paying young people, especially if the work is on top of existing commitments. Payment is an important practice to ensure equity and opportunity. Young people often have to choose between voluntary service and civic participation and supporting families or themselves financially. Offering compensation for participating in YPAR efforts helps to demonstrate the value you see in the young people and their work, and reduces barriers to participating in these efforts. How does participating in this YPAR project align with the organization's or group's goals? Being able to map the goals of YPAR onto the organization's and group's goals is one way to demonstrate a commitment to advancing shared goals. Recruiting youth to a new group. If you are recruiting youth to join an entirely new group, this can be exciting, but requires a lot of planning. You will need to think about recruitment and sustainability. You might also consider, do you want to identify youth with particular experiences, skills, or capabilities? Do you want to recruit youth with interest in a particular topic? Remember our discussion earlier about how identities and experiences are dynamic and complex. Think through what kind of experiences might support deep or broad discussions of a topic, as this can be helpful to forming a new group. How will you recruit youth? The way that you recruit will greatly impact who you have in the group. If you are recruiting from counselors who are asked to identify possible leaders, you might miss out on perspectives of young people with lived experiences with a particular topic. If you recruit youth who might not yet have leadership experience, it can take more time to build trust and rapport, and the skills needed to navigate decision-making and problem-solving. A best practice is to collaborate with members of the target audience on recruitment material review so that language reflects the intended audience. What is your plan for onboarding and retaining youth? What knowledge of the project, the policies of the organizations involved, and topics like fairness and justice will support young people to be equal partners in this effort? It is important to provide youth with access to the information they will need to be successful. Compensation is similarly important in recruiting a new group. Accessibility in YPAR. Once you've considered which youth you might engage, whether an existing or new group, you will want to consider what the unique needs of that group might be. Too often, settings may select youth with excellent oral or written communication or public speaking skills. However, YPAR is about creating opportunities for young people who might not have had opportunities offered to them. These young people might have learning, physical, or other cognitive challenges that impact communication. You may have to adapt program materials to meet the unique learning, language, social, physical, or cognitive needs of youth in the group. Here are some questions to consider. Will all youth be physically able to move around the space, access materials, and participate in planned activities? If not, what accommodations are needed? It can also be important to consider whether the building or location is accessible. If your meeting space is behind locked doors requiring a badge or in a basement, how will young people get to the group meeting space? Do all youth speak a shared language? If not, what translation supports are available to you? Are the materials you are using available in many languages? What are the different learning needs of the youth, and how will you adapt the activities to ensure all can participate equitably? When all youth can participate in ways that align with their needs, this positively contributes to group dynamics and enriches the YPAR experience for all. If you are in a school, will you have knowledge of students' learning or behavior plans and what they will need to thrive in the group? Many YPAR lessons or activities are written in ways that prioritize oral or written communication. Sometimes you may need to adapt program materials to include pictures instead of words, or shift group level debriefing to small group discussions and dyads. If young people do not feel comfortable writing or reading aloud, be sure to consider this and make modifications to activities to ensure there are ways all young people can be included. What technology needs or devices can you or the funder provide to support communication with youth if necessary? What transportation costs or services might you need to consider to remove barriers of entry for youth? What childcare costs or services might you need to consider to remove barriers of entry for youth? What food and drink options can you provide that align with the dietary needs of the youth? If you do not plan for multiple layers of inclusion, you might inadvertently exclude youth who have important experiences to share. Sustaining YPAR efforts. YPAR requires a lot of effort, and often adults have created new standing meetings or voice opportunities to support the success of the group. To ensure this extra work can positively influence the school system or community you are in, it is helpful to prepare for sustainability before you begin. Sustainability can mean that the positive changes initiated by YPAR projects continue beyond the project's immediate timeframe. YPAR can support lasting improvements in communities, institutions, and policies. Sustainability also refers to building the capacity of young people to remain engaged in civic action and leadership roles. You can create pathways for their ongoing involvement. Finally, sustainability might also mean embedding YPAR principles and practices into the ongoing work of organizations and communities. How can the information found during this project be shared with others? If you find useful strategies that support youth-adult relationship building, how can those become part of regular practice? Will you document the steps you take as a group? How will that information on the process be shared with others? Can youth voices be integrated into decision-making meetings in an enduring way? Making enduring commitments to including or centering youth voices in meetings where issues that impact young people will be discussed can be a great way to sustain and grow youth voice into decision-making. What will happen to this group once the project is over? Consider how relationships might continue to evolve after the duration of the project. Think through how youth from the group can be connected to other groups or efforts so that their newly acquired knowledge and skills can be maximized, such as establishing an email blast or shared media page for announcements and opportunities. Recap and closing. This module raised important questions to consider when designing a YPAR project. We focused on considerations for the YPAR team, specifically the adults and youth in the group. The YPAR team can be a transformative space of shared learning and growth. We are hopeful that these questions encourage reflection and enable you to plan for your project. By utilizing these steps and resources, you can effectively plan and implement YPAR that empowers youth, fosters social change, and creates a lasting impact on the community. This series of modules is a collaboration between the Colorado School of Public Health, the University of California, Berkeley, and the YPAR Network. Funding for this series is provided by the Bezos Family Foundation. The UC Berkeley YPAR Hub offers foundational materials, tools, and lesson plans to support your project. These resources focus on essential topics like youth-adult partnerships, community engagement, and promoting equality, which are vital to the YPAR process. You can access these materials at the UC Berkeley YPAR Hub.